Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today you've shared some truly imaginative source material with us. We're looking at excerpts from two very bizarre but I think brilliant surreal texts, The House of Edible Hours and The Meat Calendar. And our mission for you today isn't just to, summarize these strange stories. We're diving deep to try and pull out the governing laws of these two universes. Because these sources, they lay out these really explicit, fantastic rules about transformation and consumption. We want to understand how identity and purpose aren't just found, but are actively created, redefined when some outside force like a contract or an inheritance or just a hunger tries to tell you who you're supposed to be.
That's the core tension right there.
Yeah.
Both narratives, in their own, radical ways, explore what happens when your life is defined by some kind of obligation.
A contract.
Exactly. Whether it's a family tied to this and hungry house or these sisters who are literally grown for a harvest date, the protagonists are essentially, well, they're products or prisoners. So we're looking at how they ultimately refuse that. How do they choose a new destiny when their whole existence is tied to some prior arrangement? It's really a study in radical self-reconfiguration.
Absolutely. So let's start with the metaphysical one. With the world of the House of Edible Hours, we're introduced to the Vetch family and their central inheritance.
The capacity.
Right, the capacity, which is this ability they have to gather, render, and manipulate time itself. This is the foundation of their entire existence.
And that capacity is completely tied to their house. The house has this vast, insatiable need. It has to be fed the wasted hours of human lives.
And what are wasted hours?
It's those moments of grief or, long periods of boredom, anxiety, just passive waiting. And the Vetch women take this raw, painful time and render it into light, into candles, which fuel the house and keep it from decaying.
Okay, so we meet our protagonist, Malaura Grindle, who inherits this heavy job from her ancient grandmother, Octavia Vetch. And the description of Octavia in the source is just fascinating. Her aging isn't biological.
No, it's architectural.
Yes, her skin is layered like gloves. What does that tell us about what the keepers become?
I think it suggests that they stop being just people and start becoming, well, components of the house they maintain. Octavia has literally absorbed the history of the house. Her layered skin implies that centuries of time have turned her into this kind of walking, breathing, historical record. She embodies the house's memory.
And this is where Malaura's ethical revolution begins. This is critical. The old Vetch tradition under Octavia was built on theft. They'd just secretly take time from people.
But Malaura rejects that. She decides to become a keeper with a conscience.
Which means she'll only gather from willing donors.
It's a huge ethical shift, right? Moving from, stealthy theft to consensual exchange. The source gives us this example of Delia Marsh, a woman who had been mourning for 7 years, and that grief was so heavy she wanted to be lightened.
So Malaura takes those 7 years of grief, gives Delia relief, and gets the resource for the house.
Exactly. But this immediately creates a problem with the physics of it all.
Because Octavia drops this bombshell on her. She explains that suffering concentrates time. An hour of deep agony contains way more substance, more fuel, than a whole day of just being content.
Precisely.
Right.
Which creates this moral paradox for Malaura, doesn't it? If suffering is the most valuable resource, does her ethical gathering, only taking what people want to give, actually work against the house's desperate need for rich material?
She's choosing to be moral, but she might be starving the very thing she's trying to save. She's trading efficient predation for difficult ethical labor.
And this leads to her point of no return. She meets a gatherer named Krail from a rival lineage who is just desperate to die. He's carrying 300 years of unreleased time that he can't handle.
And Malaura makes the incredible decision to absorb all of it.
And this is where the rules of her universe just completely change. Taking in 300 years of compressed, painful time, it doesn't shatter her, it fundamentally transforms her. All of Krail's knowledge, his memories, secret passages, other gathering techniques, the history of other houses, it all gets integrated into her own mind.
So that knowledge is the source of her new power. But it came at a cost.
The cost was Krail's death, which he wanted. But it does raise that, that powerful, uncomfortable question. Is deep knowledge always paid for by deep pain?
I think that's a crucial takeaway. She didn't just survive it, she assimilated it. She used it to redefine her whole mission. And then comes the final transformation after Octavia dissolves.
Literally becomes a voice in the walls, a keeper chorus.
Right. Malaura uses Krail's knowledge to rebuild this ancient network of gathering houses, all anchored by a special candle.
The Memory of Houses candle. So when the antagonists, the consortium of ours, finally attack, the vetch house is sacrificed. It burns, and it releases all that consumed time back into the world. It wipes the slate clean.
But Malaura doesn't die with it. She transforms again, escaping by becoming a walking house. She's the network's mobile, immortal anchor, carrying generations of vetch keeping in her blood.
So she goes from being the guardian of a structure.
To being the structure, mobile, ethical, and basically indestructible. It's the ultimate example of taking this confining thing and turning it into a destiny. Okay, so we've seen how time, an abstract thing, can be consumed. Now let's shift focus completely to a world where consumption is far more literal, written right into the flesh. We're moving to the meat calendar.
And the contrast is so stark, but that underlying theme of contractual obligation is identical.
We're introduced to the Margarets, 7 sisters, all named Margaret, and they're physically connected by a shared spine. They live in their father's butcher shop, and they are, without any ambiguity, a commissioned product.
Yes, they were grown as a specialized unit. The text calls them a Margaret unit or a caterpillar, and their purpose was terrifyingly precise. Their collective essence, 7 years of their life and consciousness, was meant to be harvested.
By who?
By the woman, the contractor, on a specific date marked on the meat calendar. Their fixed-term asset, basically.
And the whole family is built on this grim contract. The father, the butcher, he got a prize out of it, golden hands, which gave him this supernatural cutting skill.
A technical benefit in exchange for his children. But the mother, she was the woman's first successful transaction.
Yeah.
And she was left mouthless.
That's such a powerful image.
It's profoundly symbolic. She can only communicate with these illegible chalkboard messages. It represents her total contractual silence. She can't protest the fate of her daughters. She's the physical embodiment of a silencing contract.
So their plan to escape this is just utterly radical. They know they're going to be cut and consumed at midnight, so they use their father's special, dimensionally sharp cleaver.
A tool of metaphysical surgery. The text implies it doesn't just cut flesh. It cuts definitions, dimensions.
And Margaret 5 becomes the catalyst. She sacrifices herself. She uses that cleaver to cut a doorway in her own spine.
To drain their collective essence, their shared consciousness, from their spine into something called the dormant mother's spine, which is this original, unused biological template just hanging in the cold room.
I have to pause there. What is that mother's spine? How is it different from the one they're using?
It's like the ghost blueprint. The shared spine is the living product, holding their identity as it was designed by the contract. The mother spine is the raw potential, the archive of what could have been. By moving their consciousness there, they're essentially rebooting their identity outside of the contractual system.
And the result is the ultimate refusal of that product definition. The 6 surviving Margarets stop being a unit for consumption. They become the ancestors and the source.
A single, ancient consciousness now living in that dormant mother spine. They now occupy the structure they were grown from, but they control its meaning.
And what about Margaret 5, the one who made the cut?
She doesn't just become meat. She becomes a literal threshold, a door between their reality and the somewhere else, where the contractor stores her failures, these broken contracts which appear as babbling mouths. Margaret 5 becomes the boundary, the memory of the sacrifice needed to get from producthood to ancestry.
That's profound. So if we try to connect these two wildly different stories, what strikes me is the difference in their tools for change. Malaura's world had rendering, turning pain into fuel, and the network.
Right. And the Margaret's world has the cleaver for surgical division and the garden for organic growth.
That distinction really highlights their struggles, doesn't it? Yeah. Malaura's success was about synthesizing the abstract. The Margaret's success was about violent, literal self-definition, using a tool of destruction to create something new.
And let's talk about the fathers, because both have to reject their original contracts. Malaura's mother tried to run and failed. But the Margaret's father, the butcher, he chooses radical action. He uses his golden hands and that cleaver to cut open his mouthless wife.
And what he releases is her hidden truth. Not a person, but this massive, impossible flesh garden growing inside her.
Which is all the life and growth and fertile purpose that had been suppressed by that contractual silence. It's the absolute antithesis of the meat calendar life unfurling instead of being scheduled for harvest.
I have to dwell on that image of the flesh garden. It's grotesque, but also nurturing. What does it represent? Why does it have to be flesh?
Well, it has to be visceral because the contract was visceral. It was literally written into the mother's body by taking her mouth. The garden is this radical, organic defiance. It's the truth of life found beneath the lie of the contract.
And so in both stories, the protagonists go from being vulnerable, from being consumed, to becoming the source of power themselves. Malaura becomes the walking house,
And the Margarets become the ancestors and the source?
and the father in the meat calendar completes his journey. He's rendered into the cleaver itself. His soul is poured into the blade.
Transforming him from the butcher who signed the deal into the tool of cutting that transforms. He ceases to be a person and becomes pure capacity.
Okay, so let's wrap this up by looking at the antagonists. We have the systemic control of the consortium and the personal transactional hunger of a woman contractor.
The consortium's reaction to Malaura's new power is, well, it's just pragmatic. They realize they can't capture her. They can't defeat her ethical network. So they go from being hunters who trapped gatherers in glass cases
To partners.
to partners. They have to join her system because the only other option is to become irrelevant.
Now contrast that with the woman, the contractor. The Margarets defeat her not with violence, but with radical refusal. When the father cuts the mother open, releasing that garden, it separates the contractor from her hunger. She's made mortal.
And her final transformation is maybe the most insightful part. After watching the shop operate for 3 years under the Margaret's new rules, she chooses to be rendered by the cleaver.
But she doesn't become a new person. She becomes a book.
She becomes the warning, a book, a narrative, displayed in the mother's garden. She stops being an agent of consumption and becomes a piece of history, a lesson.
A lesson teaching future contractors what happens when transformation is transaction instead of gift.
Exactly. Her purpose shifts from consuming life to narrating her own failure.
What a powerful end. So this deep dive shows two very different ways to escape a role you've been given. Malaura fights for ethical necessity and community. The Margarets fight for self-definition and literal physical change.
Both are a profound insistence on becoming over simply being what they were ordered to be. They repurpose the very tools of their oppression, the vetch capacity, the butcher's cleaver, into instruments of liberation.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Whether you're feeling the pressure of wasted time or feeling like a product defined by external expectations, a job, a family role, a debt, both sources offer this provocative blueprint. The ultimate power isn't always in escaping the system, but maybe in transforming it or yourself from within, using the very capacities you were meant to fear. Which leaves us with a final thought. Pulling from the surreal physics of these texts, if wasted hours like grief and tedium contain concentrated time, what essential, potent substance might be accumulating within your own unfulfilled purposes or your deepest frustrations, just waiting for the right moment and the right tool to be rendered into a powerful new source of becoming?